We are here to listen to a couple questions and a couple comments, and then one of our primary goals is to set up an expanded meeting next week where most of us can make, and we're not under a time crunch to have a greater discussion. Councilor Johnson, you had some questions and some suggestions.
Yeah, so we've had a lot of questions as it relates to the processes and procedures of closing these encampments and what happens before, during, and after. That's not what this committee is necessarily about, but I don't know of any other committee that it would be appropriate to continue that conversation, so I do think that those processes and procedures questions can be handled in the expanded meeting. But what we do handle are the allocation of funds and where those funds are going and the timing of that. And so there was a question that was raised about one particular, the $9 million for supportive services. Yeah, so I'm gonna give April an opportunity to go through the original timeline and what the actual timeline was and what the causes of those delays were and where we are now, just to clear that up, just to answer that question.
Yeah, and before I start, I think the purpose of this committee, and Vice Mayor Schulman, correct me if I'm wrong, is to ensure that as we defined how this money was supposed to be spent, that it's just spent accordingly. And that is our purpose, is that it's funneled appropriately and with urgency. And that is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It was to make sure that the funds get out appropriately. Right. And get out quickly, and then kind of keep an eye on them as they go out.
Yeah, and so everybody knows, just as re-emphasizing what we're doing. With that, it sort of carries back and forth. I mean, we've had some great successes that I've seen, but with that comment, Director, would you like to?
Absolutely, thank you.
Follow up on that?
So I'll start with the Housing First support services. It's to bring on ACT teams, intensive case management teams, peer support, SOAR, paralegals, and the original RFP. So the funding was awarded in October, and we were looking to identify a tool when we realized as a department that this did not need to go through procurement department and Metro Finance. I, as a Metro employee, did not feel comfortable just sending out a Word document for people to fill in when there's so many grant tools and platforms that you could drop it in. So we worked with several different grant tools or platforms to drop that in, and then realized in late October that they were too costly and wanted to be best stewards of the funds and not use 10,000 of them to go into just a digital platform. So we started working with Metro Legal and Grants and Contracts just to review the RFP that we were going to release. November of 2022, and then so the original timeline, we said November 15th that we would have an interest meeting. The RFP was not actually processed and approved through Metro Legal Grants and Contracts for us to release until December 6th, and that was the release date. We had an interest meeting on December 12th. And during that meeting, we had the original date for it to be due, the RFP to be due January 3rd. During the interest meeting, multiple agencies, and they all showed by a raise of hands, asked us to delay because it was so close to Christmas. And early January was a timeline that they could not meet. So they asked us to delay till January 23rd for the deadline submission. There was an addendum that we sent out saying that, that was one of the questions, someone typed it in. Is there any wiggle room with the application deadline? So we agreed to extend it till January 23rd. January 24th, all of the applications came in. Scoring matrix was sent out to the review committee, and they had until February 6th to send those back to us. The review committee's actual meeting was February 12th, and the team expressed that most all of the applications were not written to the resources that were approved by Metro Council, basically stating, they kind of wrote to the services and the strengths of their program, not to the actual RFP. And I realized shortly after that, we're asking Nashville to do like an ACT team or an intensive case management team, which is something that we don't typically have here in Nashville that's community-based. So we thought this would be a great opportunity to do negotiations with those agencies and ask them how can they leverage each other's work, because none of it, individually, it was all piecemeal. None of it was an actual ACT team or a case management team. There was 6 applications. 3 we thought could be considered comprehensive services, and 3 to 4 could be specialized support services. We asked for a shorter timeline for after negotiations. March 9th, we were wanting a week turnaround for them to send back, resubmit to us, and they asked for March 23rd in order to submit their final negotiations. So I think each step of the way, maybe there was a little bit of delay early on because we were looking for a digital platform, but each step of the way, this has kind of been what the community has been asking for. 30-day delay or an extension or a longer length of time to get back to us in writing on what their negotiations are.
So within that comprehensive plan, you have the scope that you need from those 3?
From those 3, we have the scope. We have enough, they wrote in enough for an intensive case management team and an ACT team, okay, and then 1 through some healthcare services that would be placed at the locations as well. And out of those 3, we realized like peer mentoring. So some of them wrote, wanting to continue to do outreach. These funds are in reach. Once they have housing, support services to keep them housed. So we were in negotiations. We asked, you ask for 2 positions. 1 is outreach and 1 is peer mentoring. And we're asking you to modify that to be case management and or peer mentoring on the other side of housing. Outreach was not something we were going to fund out of this. Okay. And so it was little things like that where not taking positions away, but asking them to modify it, but also wanting to know if it's within their wheelhouse of service delivery as well.
So by Thursday, you'll get the next?
Yes.
Okay.
By Thursday the 23rd, we should have a final answer on, and then asking them to work together. This for me was huge because we in Nashville kind of work in silos, and I think that this work will be best viewed by asking agencies to work together, having like a Housing First collective, with all maybe 6 agencies, sure, speaking in and writing in and updating data on the same clients, which will also help with collaboration and networking.
Perfect, thank you. Councilor Johnson, anything?
Yes, so it was my understanding that this $9 million was to expand our services once we have folks housed, because that's what's really important is the case management, right? Is to keep them in that housing and to really rehabilitate whatever issues that they have. And so yes, it has been delayed, but I would rather delay it and do it right and get folks. I mean, we're asking our nonprofit partners to do something we've really never asked them to do before. And $9 million sounds like a lot of money, but it is such a drop in the bucket as it really relates to the need that we have here. And so using that money and allocating that money wisely, I think is really, really important. So I appreciate that we have taken our time and not just kicked out these applications that were written for the wrong thing and gone back and really explained and tried to get everyone to work together, because what I learned going through our encampment closure. Oh,
we got a new one, huh?
I know. Encampment closure is that nobody is going to be able to do this on their own. It absolutely takes a village, and it's not just a metro department, or it's not just a nonprofit partner or an agency or whatever organization. It's also the community. It's the businesses around. It's everybody. And so this historical way of acting and working in silos and having very singular agendas is not going to get us where we need to go. It's not going to get us across the goal line. And so it's really important for everybody. We may not all agree on how we're doing things, but we all still have to work together and cohesively, because it's just going to take every horse pulling the cart to get across that goal line. So I appreciate that we've taken time on it. I know we would much rather jump out there and just get it done. But sometimes that's just not what the reality is. And so we're also learning. It's not just this new money, it's not just these new goals, it's also sort of retraining everybody in this environment. So, thank you.
Yeah, and one thing you find interesting is, and we found this in Brookmead, and you guys were right there, in terms of the dogs, right? We had puppies and dogs, and, I mean, it was amazing how much work, and, the Friends of Brookmead did a lot to find vets to take care of the dogs so that they could go into kennels and get adopted. Those are the subtle little things, and the people, just like us, love their dogs. And they weren't going to give them up unless we found solutions with that. So I think those are things that are defined within your scope, right? This is a crazy thing. Councilor Johnston, anything else?
No, I'm happy. I hope if anybody has a question about the delays or concerns about the delay, please ask it now, because the other thing that's really disappointing is when we have concerns that lead to misinformation that puts a stain on the really, really good work that we're doing. And I can attest to that, because go to my district and see what we've done since February. And there's 40 really happy people right now that are in housing.
Yep.
I've got a massive community that's really excited about the cleanup there, not only the residents but the businesses, and we're really changing lives and doing good work. And so anything that's moving in a direction of sabotage, and I hate to use that word, is really counterintuitive and counterproductive to what we're doing, because it's about these people.
Yeah, absolutely. I met a bunch of them at the hotel, and they're happy.
They're so thrilled.
There's a few here and there that, Alabama still likes different things, but the reality is they're still skeptical of change, right? And so, I think the best is what you're suggesting. I would just go talk to some of the people in this hotel and stuff.
Yeah.
Anything else? And Kathleen Hauser.
I just wanted to piggyback on what has just been said, and that I hope that this lays an example going forward as when we look at these large issues, that we realize the collaboration really does get the job done, and it's sustainable, as opposed to just, as you said, one jumping out and doing this and that and not being so I'm hoping that this kind of sets a new day in our community of how we deal with the issues. And that also means that we start looking at the issues and the people it impacts, as opposed to the egos of the individuals that are driving the horses, so to speak. Because what's important is the work and getting this done. So I'm very pleased to know that collaboration is now happening.
Well, for the next step, what I'd like to do is check with our group and to see if we have a common date next week where we can meet. And I looked at it, and I checked with Hannah and others, and they said it was good. So is there a date next week that all of you are comfortable, and Director, that you could be there? I really want to set purpose. And realistically, we've been meeting for 2 months, but we really have never had a chance, because we're like, get out of here, because we got to go into the council. And so it's always been secondary. And I would like that one time, place and time where we could spend. And with that, what I'd like to do is have it so that all the questions are established by, let's say Friday afternoon. And so that you have 3 or 4 days to respond to those questions. So if you could, how's everybody's next week look? We're talking about trying to have a larger meeting next week in the evening.
I was told this meeting was canceled by Hannah.
Well, we were only
Human Services didn't, this just the.
She told me this was canceled.
Well, we were, the only purpose, I told her, the only purpose of the meeting is to establish a bigger meeting so that we'd have time to actually, in a more specific thing. So I just said, we won't necessarily have a meeting, but the meeting would be to create really a time where we could all spend an hour and a half or something in a full meeting.
So were any of the questions answered? I had submitted questions for this.
No, we're gonna build a date next week. Where we could get that to the director, and then she could respond to any questions and concerns, and maybe give us a broader summary, maybe overhead, something we've never had time to do, but I think Vice Mayor Schulman asked that we would. when you, and just quick history, when we started this subcommittee or committee, we were, we had all the other things going on. We had the stadium committees going, and we had all these other things. So we really looked at not being able to pull off and have our own meeting. I think it's now time we really need to do that. So next week, we're looking at a date and time that we could all get
Thursday,
together.
the 30th looks good for me.
You do it early
I
enough.
can't do it Thursday the 30th.
Okay. What
Yeah, do you
about
want us
Monday?
to-
Monday, Tuesday.
Neil, are you trying to make a decision
Yeah,
here
I
right
was
now?
hoping to get a general idea, right? So it sounds like it's not going to be so simple.
What time of day are you
What-
thinking?
I
I
can
was
do
thinking
Monday.
it would have to be 4:30 after, just because for work schedules. What are your thoughts?
Tuesday works good.
I'm out Monday through Wednesday.
Oh, you're out
Do any
Monday.
day but
Sorry.
Thursday.
Okay, there's a
Well,
stadium.
Monday, we have a stadium meeting on Monday, yeah. that's already scheduled.
Is Tuesday work, let's say at 5?
28th.
Everybody good?
Yes.
Tuesday at 5.
Oh, no.
Going once, going twice?
Cancel
I
some
can't do
things,
Tuesday
but
at 5. Cannot.
Okay.
Friday,
Yeah, I
Try to
can't
get
do
as many as
Friday.
you can. It's tough to get everyone.
Monday?
Yeah,
Monday?
I mean, if it's
Monday.
not me, if I'm the only holdup, have the meeting. I mean, you can't,
We're going to have a problem one way or another.
Right.
That's
I don't
right.
think we're going to
Somebody's
get
gonna
the
have
10
a-
of us
that's
in
right.
the same
What does
room.
Monday, the 27th look like for?
Yeah, what time is the stadium meeting?
4:30.
It's at 4:30. We could do it after the stadium
We
meeting
could
since
go to
most of us
6.
are gonna be here
Are you
anyway.
guys okay with
Be
that?
okay with that?
Yeah, I'd rather do it Monday.
You
Yeah.
okay with that?
Well, folks are hearing.
Monday at 6?
Okay.
Okay.
Director, you okay? Monday at 6? Okay. Monday the 27th at 6 o'clock. If you could, anybody with questions, what I'd ask, Director, if you would put together the strategic plan update so that we know where you've been, and then answer the questions that any of you have. If you could get those to Hannah by, let's say Thursday at noon, so that you have a little bit of time before the weekend to answer the questions, because since it's a Monday, I think we need to have that extra time. So Thursday at noon, get questions, concerns, whatever you have, to Hannah, and then she'll forward them to April. Everybody good with that?
Sounds good.
Nobody's, yes.
I just thought before we wrap up, I know MDHA is here and they wanted to share on the affordable gap loan, so I want to make sure that she's able to share and not have to come back next Monday.
You're going to hate me. I just realized I won't be here Monday.
No.
I will be in Los Angeles. The last minute. Next best
So,
day.
back
Do we
to the
carry
drawing
on?
board.
Huh?
Do we carry on and have it anyway?
Yeah. Is there a next best day, or do we go Monday?
Or do you do Tuesday? And
Tuesday.
I'm the only one that doesn't go.
I'm not here Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday.
If it's okay with everybody, Tuesday, because I really feel like I should be here.
Okay.
But
What times?
Tuesday
Tuesday,
at 4:30 or 5?
Tuesday at 5, let's say.
Okay.
Are you okay with that? Tuesday at 5?
I think that should work.
Tuesday at 5,
Which is well as Monday.
28th. Going once, twice, I screwed up, but
Okay.
I forgot to put it on my calendar. My wife would shoot me.
Tuesday at 5.
It's my sister-in-law's 75th birthday, so, okay.
At 5, not 6, right?
5 o'clock on the 28th.
Yeah.
Cool?
If my conflict changes, I will be there.
Yeah, we'll record it just as we would normally do that.
And we could stream it,
And we
too.
might even be able to stream it. I'll check with what they can do so that anybody that, if you can't make it, then you would be able
Oops,
to
that's
see.
the wrong day.
No,
Myself, I can't
let me see. I'm going to the cities.
Any other suggestions, questions? Otherwise, we will see everybody next
We
Tuesday.
have a presentation from MDHA.
Oh, yeah,
MDA
MDHA.
only.
Still here.
Forgot about it.
Hi. Just, okay.
Well, good evening, everyone.
Thank you for coming.
No problem. I am, you're usually seeing my director, Emil Alexander, but I'm Angela Harrell. Emil is out on paternity leave, so I get to inform you all of our progress with the $25 million for an affordable housing gap financing. So our board approved the awards last Tuesday. We had a total of 3 nonprofits that were awarded and 2 for-profit developers. We had a total awards in the amount of about $10,149,000, so we are halfway there. With this funding, we are going to produce about 63 units during this first round. 3 of the awards will be repayment loans, and 2 of the awards will be forgivable loans. So we are in the process now of commitment letters went out today, will go out tomorrow. I have to say that my emails will send out tomorrow. And with that, there's some more information that we're requesting from the developers before we could finalize the developer agreement and also negotiate the terms of the repayment loans with the developers. So we're looking to do all of that. Here I have that we're going to execute the developer agreements by the end of March. Well, that's next week. So that probably won't happen. It'll be closer to the beginning of April. And then we're also going to go out with the second round of funding as well in April. So hopefully that round will take up the additional funds that we have for payment.
When are we
Go ahead.
when are we expecting the 63 units to come online where we can put folks in these rooms?
Well, it's probably going to be a while. A couple of them are tax credit projects. Usually construction is anywhere from 2 to 3 years on larger projects. We do have two units for sure because that project is already underway and pretty much nearing completion. So we'll have those 2 units, which are 4-bedroom units. So we're very proud of that because we'll be able to house a couple of families with those units at 30% AMI. So that's going to be wonderful. And then we have a rehab project that probably will take about 9 months to complete.
That will house how many people?
I don't have the unit count. I think it's maybe 20-something units for that. But
And you don't have to come back, but for the meeting that we're having next Tuesday, could you give us how many units?
I have a spreadsheet that.
Yeah, could you?
When we're gonna
A
have.
snapshot, and timing, so total and timeline.
And maybe just a little bit of information on what would have happened without this gap funding, because I think that was,
Yeah.
the whole discussion was making something happen that otherwise is going to either fall apart or take much longer. I think that's possible to.
They would just have to go find the additional funding.
Gotcha.
somewhere.
Well, it would be good if you could show the money, how it's dissolving, where it's going, units, timeline. That'd be a great snapshot.
Okay. I can provide a
Council-
timeline, but with construction,
Well,
I mean.
approximate, this is going to be
I can
9 months,
yes.
2 years to 3 years. Councilor
Just for the
Davidson?
record, though, that's not what this was supposed to be. That's not what I thought the $25 million was supposed to be. Projects that were really shovel-ready. In fact, that's exactly what they said they were, was shovel-ready, so that we would, within a year, I think is reasonable, would have these units online. And that's why we allocated $25 million. Half of this $50 million went to this because we were going to have housing quickly. And now this is not what happened, which is exactly what I was concerned about. And here we are, which is the reality, and you're talking about 2 and 3 years. I know this is not your fault. I'm just saying, this is not what this $25 million was about. And so before we do another round of this, I think we need to reevaluate this, because there's other ways. In fact, we've got supportive services that we could be funding. There's all kinds of things that we could be funding instead of waiting around 2, 3, however many years for somebody to build something. That's not what this was for. So can I make a motion that we put a halt on this and not do this whatever in April?
Are we actually conducting business at this meeting?
I don't think we can do that right now.
We will
but-
conduct business on Tuesday. I will make that
Okay.
motion.
And let's have Hannah find out how we would have to probably make a
I'll make an amendment.
resolution or
I will
something.
file an amendment to the resolution.
Right, I think we
Yeah.
have to do that in more official capacity.
I just don't want to make sure that it's correctly.
Well, and
wanna
Well,
then
let's
sure
get
it
the
has
information
teeth.
first, but this is not,
I think we also need to know if we're not going to do it, how is that going to be reallocated? Because you'd want to make sure we're doing
we've
it.
got several buckets that we could add to it, for sure.
I know, but I want to make it really clear so
I get
that
it.
it still adds the value to the home, the housing solution. Yeah.
I think
Councilor
it was
Davidson.
covered on the things for next week, the breakdown, but could you also include the distinction between what's going to be repaid
Yes.
and the grants, and then what year? Because some of the applications, I know when we had that meeting, the repayment piece
Right,
is
it's
a
a little
long
later after the
ways
tax
away.
credits.
Yeah.
I don't know if you could do a cash flow, and I mean, it might be too much, but, I'm sorry. But it would be nice to see, you know, you start with 25 billion, it goes here, this is repaid, and it comes back down,
Yes,
and then it
yes,
goes.
I absolutely
Anyhow,
do that.
it might be too much, but it's, be a nice, I in business, so sometimes
This is
I like
another
that.
column on my spreadsheet, no
Okay.
problem.
Thank you.
And just to address Council Lady Johnson. So in the RFA, we do have that the projects have to start within 6 months of the funding, once we're made the award. So a lot of the projects, I probably misspoke on saying all of the units are gonna be online in 2 to 3 years, because we have like Shelby House that they're working on. That's first phase is almost complete. So those units will be online. I will have to get my spreadsheet to tell you exactly how many units. I just can't remember off the top of my head. So there's maybe 2 of the 5 projects that actually have not closed on their LIHTC financing. So those are the projects that I'm saying maybe 2 years out before they come online. But there are
So
some units that will come online pretty quickly.
So let me ask you, so if they're supposed to be 6 months out from starting, but they still haven't received whatever you just said,
Right.
how could we approve that application when they're clearly not 6 months out?
Because the LIHTC closing, they have a timeline in their applications. So one of the projects is actually closing on, they're just waiting on the developer agreement for these funds, because they have to have all of their financing in place before they can actually close on that. And then we also need to negotiate with the LIHTC syndicators on how much, interest, when the repayments can start, and all those types of things. So there's about 2 tax credit projects that will close on their financing in the next couple of months.
Okay, well, your report on Tuesday will be helpful, I think.
Yeah, and to include why that wouldn't have happened without this. I think that's the big thing.
Is this being recorded so I can go back and watch
It
it?
is.
Any other questions that you have for MDHA? No? If not, just to repeat, we will do this next Tuesday, the 28th at 5 o'clock here. All questions are due by this Thursday, 23rd, by noon to Hannah.
I do have another comment, though. I think that what you're talking about is indicative of what I see as the problem with this entire ARP funding and how it's been handled. We approved that funding based on following the Housing First model, meaning we have the housing in place before we're closing encampments and moving people, and we're not doing that. So we're not following the protocols and what is laid out in this ARP funding at all as it's actually being implemented, because we don't have a real plan in place. And so we shouldn't be finding this out at an oversight committee, that everything that we allocated is not being implemented in the way that we understood it to be and we were told it was going to be.
Well, we had the housing when we closed my encampment, and we had the housing when we closed Brookmead. They don't actually close it until they know this is how many people are in this area, this is how many units we have, and it matches up. So do we have enough housing for everybody in Nashville that's living on the street or in a shelter? Absolutely not, but that line of thinking would have the entire everybody on the Titanic drowning. We're never going to have enough housing to house every single homeless person, whether they're sheltered or on the street, at the same time. It will never, ever happen. So you have to sort of
Prioritize the homeless.
Why won't it ever happen?
because that's thousands and thousands of units.
Just keeps growing, and there's.
It's thousands and thousands
So
of
it's
units.
impossible.
So it's impossible. So what you say is,
So there's
we're going
not
to take.
political will.
So we're gonna take what we have, and these are transitional housing. We're gonna get into this obviously, but when I know that we've got 40 units, like we did with my camp, we had 40 units. We started off with 20 people-ish in that encampment, and it grew for some reasons. But we housed every single person that was living in that encampment, plus some, were housed. So then that area is closed. And so then these people start getting treated, and they move on to permanent housing, or they move on to different areas because they're being rehabilitated. Then those rooms come available, and then you put other people in there in these other encampments, and you systematically go through the county and close these encampments while you are able to match them up with their wraparound services and all the stuff that's needed. But if we sat around and waited to handle this until we had thousands of units online so we could just have a housing surge of 10,000 people, we would never get anywhere, and all we're doing is adding and adding and adding and adding. So you have to have some type of systematic approach, and it's worked. Brookmead is closed. The people there are housed, they're safe, they're not being raped and beaten and abused and trafficked. That's not happening there anymore. It's not happening in my district anymore. So I just don't understand this mentality of we have to have housing for every single person before we're going to address any singular encampment. That's counterintuitive to anything that is reality.
I want to be clear that what I was saying was, I don't want to operate from a place of, I'm not sure what comments, what I was saying was, I'm not sure why we can't operate from a place of abundance, that we can make sure that everyone is housed.
That's the goal.
That's the goal.
Right.
And that's what we're doing. So we've allocated
But
money
when we
to
talk- when we
add
say
housing.
when we say things like, we're never going to be able to take care of everybody, well, let's not,
At one time.
But I wasn't
At one
saying, that's
time.
not what Housing First is at
and
one
I'm
time.
not suggesting that either.
Okay.
Okay, well, why don't we, they're good
There's
points.
no,
I think
suggesting that in any way,
strategically,
shape, I'm just letting you go on and on.
well, we need to,
I'm
we
like
need to
going,
do
all
more.
right.
And we're seeing success.
Yes.
So from the success, let's see what strategically, how do we leverage the future to make sure, maybe someday we'll get it all. But
And that's
it's
the
an
thing.
increment.
I want to make sure that we're operating from the mindset that we can tackle this. If we
That's right.
operate from the mindset that we can't tackle this, that's all I'm saying.
We
And I
are
don't think
tackling
she
it.
was- She was not saying we can't tackle it.
What I'm saying is, we've got this, you guys.
Yeah, we are tackling it.
Let's
I
build
agree.
this. Let's
We are
build on
tackling
this.
it.
Well, thank you, guys.
I just don't want to put that in resolution.
We will call the homeless oversight closed until next Tuesday. Thank you.
It's a long back. Till next Tuesday.
I know, I'm okay. We'll get there and do that, and
Thank you.
Are they new?
good to see you guys.
Thanks,
Courtney.
Thank you. Thank you. The transition.
I've been looking at frames, so it's like, yeah.
The meeting gonna be
Dirt sheet, he's like $79.
I knew when you said that, I was like, yeah.
Okay, you guys
Okay, I'll
all ready?
see y'all
We'll get
next
you a
week.
picture and get some of that stuff to you for every
No,
meeting.
there's one. Thanks for giving me the check.
Thanks for coming, guys.
I like when I'm in between when I'm.